Now we're going to talk about some meat and potatoes. It's like, what's for dinner? So this is what's for dinner. It's your message as a communicator, and that's really the body of the talk. Now, what I'm going to show you right now is something that I have created and I use in all of my communication tools. Now, this method is going to be something that I say it works, okay? But it's not sellable. You know, sometimes people want to sell you something that's really complicated, but this is so simple, it's not sellable. I can't sell this, it's so easy. So this is really, really simple, but it works. So watch this. The body of your talk and the body of all of my talks consist of 3 ingredients. They consist of a story, they consist of a question, and they consist of a point. So I'm going to give you a quick example, is that in my story about Are You a Good Neighbor, in my TEDx talk, I will tell a story of how I had a neighbor who got a new puppy named River, and we celebrated the arrival of this new puppy to our neighborhood. So that's a story about a dog, but what it's doing is it's leading to the question, do you celebrate your neighbors? And then the point is that as you celebrate others, you build community. And so you can use a story to then ask a question, and then that question leads to the point. But in the body, these 3 ingredients can be mixed around in any direction. Okay, you could start with a question that leads to a story, or you could literally make a point and then you can affirm the point with the story. But what's critical for me when it comes to including story in the body of my talks is that story makes it personal. And I believe that authenticity is what communicates best. And so I tend to develop talks around stories of personal experience, tragedy, things I've overcome, or experiences that I've had that have been somewhat unique. And so these 3 ingredients make up the body of your talk. Now watch this. If your talk has 3 points, then you'll have 3 stories. You'll have 3 questions, right? And you have your 3 points. If you're communicating in a church environment, you have scripture to support that. But ultimately, it's about these 3 ingredients that make up the body of your talk. And so a lot of times communicators get confused because they're not too certain what to put in the body of their message. What are those ingredients that go there? And they may just fill it with a ton of information, but it hasn't been transformative information. That's where the story becomes your best friend. When you tell a story, it allows people to step into a moment of transformation in somebody's life. And if it's your life that's being the example of that transformation, then it leads you to the opportunity to give them a question. And that question makes it personal to your audience. And then the point becomes really that takeaway. That's the takeaway. I'm going to spell it backwards. The takeaway is what they can then realize from this story. That was why you told it. You know, so in a situation that you may be in right now as you're developing a talk and you may have a sense of fear or fog in front of you, pause for a moment and think about the story that can lead to a question that can drive home a point you want to make. Because that story brings that importance to the surface and it makes everyone aware of the situation, that then you can make that question personal so they can apply it. And then that way your message is memorable. Because that's what the body of your talk is all about. Now, this can happen multiple times. So you can have 3 stories, 3 questions, and 3 points in 3 different orders. But ultimately, the body is made up of stories, questions, and points. And as you communicate clearly with this model, your audience will not only understand, but then they'll actually be able to internalize it and believe it personally. So then it leads to greater application. Because that's where our audiences get confused, is when they don't know where you're leading them. So at the end of the talk, they have nothing to remember, but they don't have clarity on what you wanted them to do or feel. Because change happens in 2 ways. Change happens internally, something that you feel, but then change happens externally by something you do or apply. So as a communicator, you may have a talk that you're hoping to change something, in a mindset or an internal belief. Or you may have something you want to change as an application of a doing or a actual serving or actually implementing. But oftentimes, as you know, the only way you can bring change externally is to begin to unlearn or change something internally. And that's where stories and questions become so powerful in the body of your talk. It's not just sharing information, it's sharing transformation. And then the takeaway is that point that they get to apply in their own life. So enjoy mixing these ingredients together, your stories and your questions and your points, and they can go in any order to help communicate clearly and confidently as you take the stage and share your message with your audience.